constant thing in music is the change up in many lineups for bands. However, when you change something like a frontman or frontwoman of a band, you really kind of run the risk of destroying what you've created with that previous member. A lot of bands do not do well after their changes. However, these are my top 5 favorite changes to any lineup, particularly concerning vocalists of bands.
Number 5.
Number 5 is I Wrestled a Bear Once, Krista Cameron to Courtney LaPlante. Krista Cameron really kind of defined I Wrestled a Bear Once with her amazing transitions from clean vocals, which almost had kind of a gospel feel to me, and her just dirty growls and screaming that was something that not a lot of other vocalists, even within the same metalcore, hardcore genre, were even capable of. She had such an amazing range, and over the course of her history with I Wrestled a Bear Once, she only improved from their first album through the last one that she appeared on, and it was a definite transition. And it was good to see her kind of branch out a little bit more, and everything kind of became a little bit cleaner, her transitions and things like that. And she really did a great job with I Wrestled a Bear Once. However, after her departure, her shoes were filled by Courtney LaPlante, who was actually in a fairly similar band to I Wrestled a Bear Once, which was why she was actually incorporated into this band. And I feel like she actually took things a step further. I think her transitions are a little bit smoother, especially her clean vocals definitely have a more dynamic range to them, and they basically sound a lot nicer. And contrast that to her growls and her screams, which are absolutely fantastic, and I would say even a little bit better than Krista Cameron. Now, to be fair, like I said, Krista Cameron was kind of steadily improving herself throughout her time with I Wrestled a Bear Once, and we don't know what she may have become. However, I just feel like Courtney LaPlante really kind of brings something new to the band and really kind of elevates them to the next level, and that's why I think she's one of my favorite changes, and definitely my favorite change up to their lineup.
Number 4.
Number 4 is Norma Jean with Josh Scogin to Corey Brandon. The first Norma Jean album, which I reviewed on this channel, is kind of really rough. It's pretty kind of grimy, dirty, mathcore, hardcore mixed in. And a lot of it, as far as why it feels rough, is due to the vocal work from Josh Scogin. Now, that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just a little bit off-putting at times, and it feels a little bit coarse. Now, Josh Scogin went off to form The Chariot, which is another one of my favorite bands of all time, and I feel like his vocal work there greatly improved, especially over time from their first album to their last album. And after his departure, we got Corey Brandon, and Corey Brandon really kind of, again, took this band to a whole nother level, especially because of his ability to create music. He's not just a vocalist. He plays guitar, he plays other instruments, and he's just fantastic at writing songs and kind of making things cohesive. I really feel like he brought a nice flair to Norma Jean. He wasn't trying to copy Josh Scogin in any way, and that is fantastic. And he's only improved over time, especially with his clean vocals as well. They've just gotten absolutely fantastic, especially on the last album, Wrongdoers, and it really kind of leads you to be excited and anticipated about their next album coming out, as well as his other projects like 100 Suns. And I feel like Corey Brandon really kind of brings something to Norma Jean and just kind of accelerated them from just a kind of simple mathcore kind of band, and they could have stayed that way, but I really feel it was a lot due to his influence on the band that has kind of elevated them to the status that they have today.
Number 3.
Number 3 is Underoath with Dallas Taylor to Spencer Chamberlain. if you haven't heard early Underoath, you probably wouldn't expect their sound based off of what they later become. They really kind of started as a Christian deathcore band, which may sound like an oxymoron, but it's really not. And I actually like their first album, and particularly their second album. There's a completely different style, and they started going through a change with the album, The Changing of Times, which literally was why the album was called that. A lot of their members kind of departed, new members came in. Dallas Taylor was still the frontman at that time. And I really kind of started growing tired of his voice on the album. I really don't think he was comfortable doing what Underoath was doing at that time within that kind of screamo, hardcore styling that that the band was going for at that time. I just don't think he really fit. Now, that's not to say that I don't like Dallas Taylor's voice. I mean, you can listen to Million and the Sons of Disaster, his band after departure, and his voice is absolutely perfect with that style of kind of southern rock and hardcore, and that is something I feel like he feels comfortable with and doing, versus on The Changing of Times, where his voice really just doesn't fit it too well. And then after his departure, we get Spencer Chamberlain, and on his album, his debut album, which was They're Only Chasing Safety, which is a lot of people's favorite Underoath album. Honestly, I think it's a lot to do with the time it was released and where a lot of people were at that time and the whole genre at that time. Personally, it's not my favorite Underoath album. I enjoy it, but there's a lot I don't like about it. And particularly one of the things I don't like about it is Spencer Chamberlain's voice on there. He was much trying to copy Dallas Taylor, who again was uncomfortable, I feel, on that with that style, and it kind of shows. If you listen to Spencer Chamberlain's previous band to this, he sounds a lot more comfortable and free on that with that band, and that's something we get with the next album, which defined the Great Line, which is is a lot of people's best example of what Underoath can do. I think that it's also definitely one of my favorite albums from the band. Lost in the Sounds of Separation is definitely my favorite. I think that's where they really peaked. I think that was the best example. But Define the Great Line was really kind of a turn for the band, and I feel like on that is where the whole band as a together really kind of came into their own, and particularly Spencer Chamberlain. He wasn't trying to copy Dallas Taylor in this album, and it really shows, and you can hear it, and his just guttural screams and things on here are just absolutely fantastic, and they feel natural, which is great. They really fit in his transitioning as well, and he took on a bigger role with the band as they kind of went on and eventually disbanded. Now they're back, but with the departure of Aaron Gillespie, he really kind of stepped up and took over the clean vocal work, particularly on their last album, and even Lost in Sounds of Separation, he really kind of stepped up a bit more, and I just feel like that was such a great change. He feels comfortable with Underoath. He feels like he belongs to that band, versus Dallas Taylor feels more suited to his current band, which again, I'm not trying to dismiss Dallas Taylor as a vocalist. I think he's fantastic. I just don't think he fit with Underoath, so this is why it's one of my favorite changes here.
Number 2.
Number 2 is Vanna with Chris Priest to Davey Muse. Now, Vanna actually went through a few vocalist changes. Their first vocalist, Joe Braggle, and then to Chris Priest, and then now to Davey Muse. One of the reasons why this is my favorite change is the band itself actually changed a lot around Davey Muse, and I think his vocal work that you can hear off of the last album, the first album they released with him on it, they re-released a track called Trash Mouth, and it sounds something right that Every Time I Die would have done, and it's fantastic. It's just this dirty kind of southern hardcore riff to it, and Davey Muse's voice is just fantastic, and that's something that carries over to their last couple albums, where I feel like he was right at home doing what he does. And Chris Priest was a decent vocalist. His screamings, were okay, but I don't think they were done as well as Davy Muse. I feel like there was too much of a separation between his screams and his kind of growls and his harsh vocals versus Davy Muse, who feels a lot more comfortable, a lot more natural doing transitions like that. And I feel actually even his screams are definitely a lot better. And the band in general has changed around him to the point where now they're not so much a screamo kind of band that was very popular around the early 2000s, and they're more of a hardcore band. Like I said, influences of Every Time I Die, Norma Jean, and that's something I love to hear, and I think they really kind of stepped it up with their last couple albums, and I think Davy Muse has really been a part of that, and I think that his vocals have really helped them kind of branch out a lot more. They did also get a new clean vocalist as well, again, who I think also is a better vocalist than who they had previously. But I feel that Davy Muse was definitely the integral part of why that change, why these changes in their sound were made. And I think his voice is absolutely fantastic and fitting for the band.
Number 1.
Number 1 is Dance Gavin Dance, who went through several changes, starting with Johnny Craig to Kurt Travis to Johnny Craig again, and now to Tillian Pearson. Now, a lot of people like Johnny Craig as far as being a vocalist. They like his voice. He has a very clean sounding and kind of soulful voice. Particularly, I don't exactly love his voice. I think he does have a good voice. I think he can do very well. But I'm not in love with it. I don't think he's fantastic. He kind of, there are other vocalists that kind of do what he does a little bit better. And I don't think he fits in really well with Dance Gavin Dance's sound. And that's one of the things I really liked about the changes here to the band and to the lineup. Also, Johnny Craig is not exactly, I know he's doing better now, but he almost ruined the band as well. And it's really kind of unfortunate things like that happened, but you know, he's in a whole nother band now. That's a whole nother story. Anyways, Johnny Craig, once he left, they got Kurt Travis to fill in, and I think Kurt Travis was absolutely fantastic in this role. His kind of he wasn't as smooth as Johnny Craig, and I think that's something that really kind of worked with the band. I think that worked very well. He departed and left on for A Lot Like Birds, and we got Johnny Craig again, but then we got Tillian Pearson, who we have now, who I think is a way more dynamic vocalist than Johnny Craig ever was, and even more than Kurt Travis. He's not as harsh as Kurt Travis. Kurt Travis kind of got a little bit coarse at times, and I like that. That was something I really kind of liked and gravitated to for Kurt Travis, but I feel like Tillian Pearson has a little bit more of a smoother voice, but yet it's not quite as smooth as Johnny Craig, and that's again a good thing for this band. It just fits in, and I think he really has a high dynamic range for his sound, and it really kind of showed on their last album, Instant Gratification, which I reviewed and loved. And I feel like he kind of was spreading his wings a little bit and expanding himself and being more comfortable with his sound and with the band, and that's a great thing. And I think really this lineup feels like Dance Gavin Dance. This feels like this is the best that they can be. I think they all work off of each other fantastically, and I really hope that this lineup kind of continues on for the future.